Three. And we're live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's Spill the Kopi with me, CuddlyBossLady. Today, we at a new time of 6 p.m. Thank you for those who have put their dinner aside and come and listen to us. My guest today is Ross Davenport from our Finnish family as well, a three-time Olympian, a Commonwealth Games champion. So let's start off by perhaps you could tell us, Ross, a little bit of your own journey as an athlete.
Yeah, sure. So I think really going back to the beginning, had a very, if you can say, normal kind of upbringing. And certainly when I started my swimming journey, it was very standard. I learned to swim from a young age. Because as a life skill, that's something that my parents wanted me to learn. And when I was around about six or seven, my brother came home one day and said that he wanted to join the local swimming club. And the reason that he wanted to join was because his friends wanted to join or had joined. And having always looked up to my brother, he was 2 years older than me. It's just something that naturally that I wanted to do as well. So we both joined a very small swimming club in the Midlands in the UK, and that's where the journey started. And it was a case of we progressed through the ranks of certainly the lanes and the squads in the small swimming club, and then around about the age of 12. Moved to a bigger club, the City of Derby. For those that are familiar, it's where Adam Peaty did his age group swimming before he went on to go to Loughborough and the National Performance Centre. So that's where really, the training ramped up. The qualities of swimmers was a bit greater. So the age of 12, that's where we went, and things progressed from there. This is the age around about 13 was the age where it didn't go to plan. Certainly for me, I always wanted to be a footballer growing up. If anyone asked me when I was
is it the English thing?
English, a typical boy. Just wanted to play football. I wanted to be, for those who know, I wanted to be Gary Lineker. He used to be a forward for England, and that's all I wanted to do. If you asked me from the ages of probably 4 to 9, I wanted to be a professional footballer, but I was terrible at football. My passion certainly outshone my ability in football, but that's what I wanted to do. And at 13, I was good at swimming, probably the best in the county. Not probably the best in the region, or certainly nowhere near anywhere in nationally. But I was good for the club, and I was good for the county that we lived in. But my friends after school went to play football, and they were playing football at the weekends, or soccer at the weekends, and that's something that I wanted to do. But because I was going swimming, I couldn't join in. And when I was going to school the next day, they were talking about how they'd been on the park all night and things like this. And I felt like I was missing out. So I actually took a year out at 13 to go and be a boy and, play football. But I soon realized that it got dark in the UK in the winter at 5 o'clock. And you can't play football in the dark. And as soon as I was at home watching TV at 5:30, really not doing a lot. And at the time, my PB for a 4-length front crawl short course was, I think it was like 1 minute 0.6. And my parents, my mum mainly, said you'll always regret never going under the minute barrier mark for 100 meters front crawl. And so she carried on nagging me really and said, you should go back.
Mums do.
Yeah, typical. And she said, it's something that you'll always regret never doing, because when you get to, certainly being an adult, it's something that you could say, well, yeah, I went under a minute for 4 lengths front crawl, and it's like at the minute you can't say that, and you will regret it later on in life. I didn't think I did at the time. I wasn't that bothered at the time, and so I actually went back to. It was after a year. I went to go and watch my brother at the national championships, and the people that or the friends I used to train with were at the nationals in a relay, and I watched this relay team. I think they made the final. I'm not actually sure how they got on. That was like my relay team. That was something I was part of, but because I'd left, they'd carried on and been successful anyway. And it was that moment then I thought, I probably am going to try this one more time and go back and go under the minute barrier mark. I can politely tell my mum to leave me alone now and stop hassling me.
They will never stop doing that.
It just moves on to the next thing. But then it'd be a part of something again, something that I had actually missed a little bit. So I went back at 14 to the city of Derby, and I talk a lot to children now and swimmers, and I always say this, and it's not there's a moment for me where the penny dropped, and it was at that age where I went back. And beforehand, I used to be probably a little bit cheeky, a little bit I wouldn't say mischievous, but I was always up for a laugh, and sometimes would get out halfway through a session and go to the toilet or go and have a shower, or I'd pull on the lane ropes, or I'd miss some lengths out. I wasn't necessarily naughty, but I just wasn't probably doing things the way that I should have been doing. And I went back at 14 and just said to myself, look, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to give it 100%, and I'm going to see how far I can go. And I kind of came back with a completely different attitude. And within 3 months, I went 57 seconds for 100 meters front crawl, and never looked back since. So there was that moment in time where the real crossroads in my life at that time, and certainly looking back now, if I chose a different path, it would have been a completely different outcome. And then from that age, from 14, going to 57 seconds, my parents said to me, right, well, you can call it a day now. And I was like, no way. I'm in now. The harder I work, the better I become. It was so obvious to me that if I don't get out and go and have a shower, or don't pull on the lane ropes, or I'm not cheeky, and I engage in the sessions and I give it everything I've got, the better I become. And it was just such a light bulb moment, penny dropped, and it was just clear as day that you work hard, you get better. And for me, that worked a treat. And then progressed through the junior ranks, and then I was fortunate enough to represent Great Britain at the World Championships in 2003, and then the following year made my first Olympic Games, and then went on to represent Great Britain at 3 Olympic Games. And that's something that I never thought I'd ever be able to do, or ever be good enough to do. And I never believed I could go to an Olympic Games until the letter dropped on the doorstep and said, you've been selected for Athens 2004. So, I lived out, I wouldn't even say my wildest dreams, because I never dreamt it, because I never believed it could happen. So I say a lot now to young swimmers or people out there that, extraordinary things happen to ordinary people. And I come from a very small town in the middle of the UK, and not a lot happens from where I come from. And I managed to go to 3 Olympic Games, and as you said, the Commonwealth champion, and picked up some medals along the way. So that's my career, Michelle.
I mean, you mentioned your mum, doing the mum thing in where, and then, I mean, in what ways do you think your family was supportive? I mean, obviously your mum, or your parents, I should say, they didn't push you to the point where, no, you're gonna, do this, put up or shut up kind of situation. Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the ways that you could say is that you took a sense of ownership for what you do, and they allowed you, but they encouraged you to because you had to want it for yourself, right?
Yeah.
To go to the training and all
Yeah.
that. So, in what other ways do you think your family was supportive, other than the nagging and the other stuff?
I think I don't think I really don't think they planned it out, and I don't think they had alternative motives when I was growing up, other than you are going to learn to swim because it's a life skill. That's non-negotiable. If you want, and my parents were very supportive anyway, and they said, if you want to do something, then as long as we can and we can afford it and we can manage the times and everything, and it doesn't impact you in your schoolwork, then we'll do everything we can for you. So we weren't spoilt in any way, and it wasn't, my parents weren't well off growing up. So it was the case of we had that as children, we had that level of respect for them, that if we were going to do something, we had to do it to the best of our ability, because we knew it didn't come easy financially to do things. So, when I was probably being a bit cheeky and a bit, disruptive,
Teenager.
Yeah, it was a case of, well, my parents were like, well, we're not paying for you to go and mess around. If you don't want to do it, and they said this a lot, mainly with my brother, actually, because he liked to just, one session he wouldn't want to go, and he'd be like, oh, I want to quit. And my parents always said, right, well, if you want to quit, you can do, but you've got to quit at the end of the month when we stop the check. And it always happened that it was the first or second week of the month that conversation would happen. And by the time it got to the end of the month, it was either forgotten or whatever. And the next check, certainly my parents didn't bring it back up and said, do you want to quit now? Because it's something that we were doing. We were fit and active, and we were a part of a club, and it was something that was certainly good for us. So it wasn't something they wanted to give up lightly, and they were willing to put the time in. So in the balance of the parents, in my parents, that my dad was the one that would go out to work and would earn the money to enable us to go training, and my mum was the one that facilitated it and made sure that we got there on time. But even when I was growing up in swimming, I swam with people whose parents packed their bags, that got them a snack afterwards. They really did wrap them up in cotton wool, and I think I had a really fine balance of parents being supportive and encouraging, but also backing off when needed to be. And you pack your own bag. You're 14. You can, if you
exactly.
If
you're responsible for.
Yeah. If you leave your goggles, you have your spare, and if you've not packed your spare, then you kind of learn those lessons, that be prepared, and mistakes happen and everything. So I understand that, but it was very much a case of you have ownership, and because I was the younger one in the relation in
family.
Family, my brother had been through the whole routine before, and he was really eager. He loved it, and he would come back on a Monday night. So, get me up for training tomorrow. So my parents would get up at 5 o'clock and they'd go and wake him, and he'd be like, "Oh, I've had a really bad night's sleep. I'm not going this morning." So my mum and dad went back to bed, and 7 o'clock came. He'd be like, "Oh, why didn't you wake me up, and why didn't you get me out of bed?" I said, "Well, because you didn't want to." When I came along and said I wanted to go training, my parents said, "Right, okay, that's fine. We'll take you. Come and wake us up." So every morning, it was on me to get up, get my breakfast, and go and get them up. They were up. I knew they were up, but it was almost, again, putting that ownership on me, saying, "We're here. We will take you. Make sure you get ready and come and wake us up, because we don't want to be the ones coming driving it for you if you're the one that wants it." So,
different tactic to your brothers. I mean, your brothers.
They learned, and it was just, like I say, different tactic, different personalities. And it was something that that penny dropped for me. So it was never an issue, because I knew what I had to do to be able to get better. And like I said, at 14, 15, I had no aspirations of going on to the Olympic Games or anything, but it was just a case of, let's just see how far we can go, how fast I can swim. And that was the crux of the matter. It wasn't about, I wonder if I could win the Midland District, or wonder if I can get to nationals and win nationals. It was just a case of, well, let's just see if I can swim faster than I did last week.
So it's your own, like I said, personal challenges rather than, I want to go to the Olympics by this age, or I want to. You were just, I guess, challenging yourself. Let's see what I can do from stage to stage.
Yeah, and I've been fortunate all the way through my swimming career, life. However you want to look at it. And I was fortunate that we had some senior swimmers when I was 14, 15, 16, who were probably 20, probably 10 years older, 8 to 10 years older, and they really set the tone of the swimming club, and they were in it and they wanted to be there. And they, as a young adult, they could have done anything that were working, but they were coming from work, going training. They were really pushing the group on, and just in the sense of the changing room dynamics. You knew where you sat in the pecking order, and it was always good to have somebody older to aim for, and try and
kind of role.
Yeah, and it's I guess a role model springs to mind, and because they were a lot older, they were faster, so it was a case of, and they hate getting beat. And so the arrogance of a 15, 16-year-old lad coming along trying to beat them just moved everything on. And then it was almost like a vortex or a vacuum, where as soon as one person does it, there's 2 or 3 behind you that are willing to do it. And then there's 5 or 6 behind them. And it just so happened that I was at the top of this kind of pyramid trying to drive it through. But there were so many people underneath that went on to, be really successful at a very small club. And, we had a great coach and we had a great squad. And, the amount of swimmers out of City of Derby at the time that went on to represent, whether it was European juniors for Great Britain, or whether it was, in representing your school at an English level. Dean Milwain was a swimmer that I swam with at the Commonwealth Games that also went to the Olympic Games. So for a small club, to have 2 Olympians, there was a right recipe in there, and everything kind of fell into place quite nicely.
That's good. I mean, we talked about some of that you had. I wouldn't say struggles is probably a strong word, but obviously there were some things that you had to work past. You were talking about, when the penny dropped when you were 14. So, what are the struggles that you did face, whether it's the beginning of your journey or all the way through, and how did you get past them? Or, well, did you? We could ask that too.
Yeah.
So perhaps you can.
I think there's going to be struggles all the way. Same with in life, work, families, relationships. There's struggles in everything, and it depends on what stage the struggles come to probably how you deal with them and how you get over them, if you do get over them. But certainly for me, the struggles from being an earlier kind of wanting to go and play football, and I guess the encouragement from family kind of got through that one. And then the struggles, I was very fortunate not to get injured throughout my career. Okay, I had a niggle here and there, and a little
Nothing
bit. Nothing major. So there was no struggles to get over on an injury front, but I strongly believe that I didn't get injured because I managed my body the best I could, to the best of my knowledge. I'm not claiming I'm a physio or anything, but certainly later on when we did have access to physios, get a shoulder injury or shoulder niggle, I wouldn't just go and sit on the bed and say, like, fix my shoulder. It's like, or I've got this pain here and it happens here. Why would that happen? And trying to understand what's going on. And again, it's that ownership of understanding your body. Because swimming is one of those sports that, you're not in a team environment. Okay, you are in a team environment, but you're not in a team environment where you're crucial to how the team operates. If you don't perform, it's you as an individual that's not performing. It's not like a star striker or star player in basketball that you need them on the team to drive the team forward. So it's a case of understanding what's going on, and it might be a case that I've got a shoulder injury. It's because my lower back's really tight. It's because my hamstrings are pulling on my lower back and they're really tight. So spend 10 minutes stretching, and you won't get the shit. So it's understanding everything that goes into it. In terms of getting over the struggles and what are the struggles, that external factors play a huge part of understanding family and friends, not putting too much pressure on to do things away from what you need to do. Relationships, can be a huge struggle for a lot of people. I've seen it in the past where there'd be a bad breakup and that's it. The male or the female just goes in a completely different direction because they're so upset and so heartbroken. But there's so many struggles, and it's how you ultimately need to deal with them yourself, but you need to have a strong network around you to be able to rely on.
I mean, obviously you mentioned the older swimmers in your club that played the role model / mentor kind of role. Do you think that's a very important part for an athlete, particularly from the early days of their journey? Because age, sometimes some swimmers will start to grow later, and some depending on where it is. And do you think having a mentor of some kind, whether it's an older swimmer or not say a coach, but someone that can keep an eye out is one thing, I guess, one way to put it.
I think certainly older swimmers, and because we're talking about swimming, but older people in a swimming club, in a group environment, I think there's so much responsibility on their shoulders that they probably don't even know about. And a lot of younger swimmers always look up to the older group and how they act and how they interact with the coaches or other people, and how they hold themselves and what they do and what they talk about. All these different things really does set the younger generation of how to act. I certainly remember growing up, idolizing is a bit of a strong word, but certainly looking up to swimmers that were a lot older, just thinking, I want to be you, or I want to be like you, just because you're older and you're cooler, and you try and imitate the things that they do, and and no doubt that the older swimmer doesn't know anything about what this younger swimmer is trying to replicate. But I think I've seen it in the past where you can be really good as an old junior, but you can mess around, you can party, you can do all these different things, and that has a big impact on the next generation coming through, because they think it's acceptable to do that, and they think it's acceptable that you can get away with it. But the older swimmer probably doesn't go on to reach their potential. Now, the flip side of that is you have somebody that's in the club that lives their life as a what we would deem as a real positive role model, and then it has again a vacuum where people want to be that person and they want to live their life like them because they are so successful. So I think role models come in negative and positive ways, and it's down to the individual of both the role model and the person looking up to them to choose which way they want to act how they want to be perceived, and trying to cherry pick all the good things from the people you want to be like, and disregard the bad things. So I had it growing up, and when you're at that stage, you don't necessarily feel like you're a role model to anybody, but no doubt people look up to you and try and replicate what you've done.
So before we move on to the next, I'd just like to mention that because Ross is our guest today, we have a very special giveaway. Ross will choose his favorite question of today, and the winner will receive a Finistability snorkel. So keep those questions coming in, and Ross can choose which one he likes. So I might take one. We have one from actually Finist Malaysia. Says, hey Ross, tell us what's going through your mind when you swam the 2006 4x200 relay, and how did it feel winning gold? It was a very close race, I assume. I mean, swimming careers are like minute differences, right?
Yeah. So I'm sure nobody knows the race, but it was a race where the Australians were meant to win, and Canada were certainly going to be challenging them, and the English and the Scottish was supposed to battle it out for third and fourth. Actually, it turned out completely on its head. It was actually the English and Scottish that were battling it out for the gold medal. And fortunately for me and the English team, we managed to get our hands on the wall first, and we won the Commonwealth Games. And over a 7-minute and 20-second race, I think it came down to 0.2, 0.3 of a second. So it was very close. And really, I was the last leg, and I went in probably 4 or 5 meters behind the Australian swimmer. And it was a case of just swimming your own race and concentrating on what you can do, because you can't affect anybody else. The swimmer in the next lane could have gone and done the fastest relay split in the world, and there's nothing you can do about it. So it's all about just really focusing on what you've been practicing for such a long time, and trying to execute your race plan to the best of your ability. And when it comes down to it on the last length, you just give it everything. Unfortunately for us, that was enough, and we won the gold medal. But it comes down to what you've just said, Leah, in terms of things come down to small margins, and you can look at it and you can think, oh wow, that they were lucky, or wow, that was a close one. Could have gone either way. It could have gone either way. The chances are it goes the way that the person that has done the small things right for a long time. It doesn't people think it comes down to chance a lot. It doesn't. And certainly when you're in that swimming environment, if you've done everything that you can do to the best of your ability, within half a second of what time you're going to swim. What you don't know is where that's going to position you in the race, because you don't know how anybody else is going to race. So there's not really many surprises with your time, unless you swim badly and have a real bad swim because you've missed the wall, or you messed up your dive, or you've done something completely out of character that you didn't expect to do. If you've done everything to your best of your ability, really within that scale of where you're going to be. So when it comes down to the close races, it tends to come down to the person that's really honed in on the fine skills, that when you get a little bit fatigued or you get tired, you get a bit lazy on. I coached for a few months after I finished, and I was drilling into the swimmers about just pushing off the wall in streamline. Everybody can do it. And then after 2 turns, everyone's back to hands apart, pushing off without streamlining. And it's a case of, you can tell swimmers there's no magic secret in swimming. The less resistance and the more force wins. That's quite simple. If you can push off the wall in a streamlined position opposed to a knot, then you're probably saving yourself a second over 4 lengths. If you go into have a fast rotation on your turn, every single turn, you're probably going to save yourself 0.2 of a second, depending on how many turns you've got. Just say it's 100 meters front crawl, short course. There's another 3. It's over half a second, 0.6. So you can make all these big differences. And if you say to your swimmers, do you want to? If I give you right now a 1.5 second PB, would you take it? And all the swimmers are like 100%. Right. Push off in streamline and make sure your rotations are quick on the wall. That's all you have to do. You don't have to be stronger, fitter, faster. You just have to be more disciplined on your skills. And that's something that a lot of people can't get their head around, because they're not trying harder. It's just about swimming smarter and about doing small things better than everybody else.
And it will gain you that, because 0.5 can make such a difference in how your race would go, whether it's for a PB or, qualifying for something. And just makes a huge difference.
0.5. Yeah, like you say, 0.5 is the difference from winning and coming second, from third to fourth, so winning a medal or not winning a medal, or from 8th to 9th, making a final or not making a final, or even being part of whatever it is that the event is. And like I said, I think it was 7 minutes and 20 seconds. Then it came down to 0.2 of a second. So we could have easily, over such a long duration of a race, it comes down to the touch. It just comes down to the many months and years beforehand of doing things properly. And that's where I think a lot of swimmers that don't probably reach their potential don't focus on.
So we'll take some questions from the audience. I think that would be kind of, let me see. Let's have one from Jessica, or Jewel, sorry. Do you have any tips with coping with long distance?
Coping or swimming long distance? Yeah, so I think a lot of long distance, and it depends on how long we're talking. If it's talking, swimming the English Channel, which I think is 22 or 23 miles, or is it about a case of swimming an 800, 4 to 800? Any tips? You've really got to break it up, and you've got to break it up into manageable bite-sized chunks, no matter what the distance is. Even to be fair, even if you're doing a 200 meters, you still break it down, and you break it down, and it depends on the length of the race to how detailed you break it down. But so my event was 200 meters front crawl. I would break down the first 15 meters of where I wanted to be. Well, first of all, reaction time. I wanted my reaction time to be under 0.7 seconds. I wanted my 15 to be under 6 seconds. And then it's a 25 meter, then your 50, and then your second 50, third 50, fourth 50. But in that, you've got your turn time. So you're 5 meters away from the wall to 5 meters away the other way, of trying to be under 2 meters a second. So all these different things you can break down, and you can then focus on training on individual segments. So it's not a case of, I've got 800 to do and I want to do 9 minutes for the 800. It's a case of, right, well, let's break this down into probably 10 bite-sized chunks of where do I want to be for the first 25, because if I go too fast on the first 25, it might affect the last 200 meters. Or if I control it and I work on my stroke rate and my distance per stroke, then hopefully down the ending of the race, I've got a lot more to give than I would do if I really went for it on the first 100 meters. So it's about breaking it down, and just say you wanted to do the channel swimming, it's 22 miles. Again, you've got different currents and you've got all the different things that come into play. It's about breaking it down. And I've never done it. I'm probably never going to do the channel, but I can only imagine you break it down by time. And you say, right, I want to do, let's get in, let's acclimatize, let's do the first 30 minutes, then let's do an hour, and let's move on to 3 hours, and just kind of gauge where you are all the way through the challenge, and make it manageable. So you're not just always looking, I've got a 22-mile swim. I've actually got 30 minutes. Yeah. So
usually what I would suggest to my open water swimmers is you're always in the beginning of a race, depending on obviously the distance that you do, is the beginning of the race is you would be a little bit faster, because in open water's case, you would have to get away from the pack.
Yeah.
And then you would steady out your pacing in the middle, right? And then towards the end, there's always, the last buoy, you can just, kick it down. And then you would know in that instance, I've got this, right? Because you trained yourself as a thinking race. I mean, I always encourage any of the swimmers that I work with is think about your race, and your training will build you towards that ability to say, right, I can see an opening in the pack, or even in the pool is, I've got the one person that I know I can pace that person. You follow them and you watch them. Think about how this is over like 800,005, and you've got it. Okay, I can pick up here, or I can do a negative split for a distance. All right, because actually doing a negative split is hard work. But all the stuff that you've done before should, in theory, have prepared you for that moment.
Yeah, right? Definitely. And there was the Italian swimmer, Gregor Pallinari. I think I just butchered his name right there. But the 1500 swimmer from Italy, he's just gone, I think, the second fastest time in the world on the 1500. And if you look at his splits, the last 400 meters, taking away the last 50, because obviously it's the last 50, the 750s before that all were within, I think, 0.15 of a second. So pretty much 1.1 of a second. All of them were 29, I think it was 29.0 or 29 something. All of them just bang, 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 all the way through. And I think 3 of them were exactly the same time down to the 100. And that doesn't come by chance. That comes down to repetition, stroke rate, stroke count, and just really ingraining it into, like you're saying, thinking about your race, thinking about how it feels. And training's all of, you train to make the racing easy. And if you can work hard in the training environment, then the racing is going to be a lot easier. And if you can really kind of ingrain yourself to swim efficiently for longer distance, for every single repetition, then accumulatively you end up with, So, he could have swam a 27 seconds at any point of that race, but his next 50 probably would have been a 32. So it's about just being really efficient, knowing where you are at in terms of fitness. So a lot of right now, where people have been in lockdown and not been able to swim, you're not going to be able to hold those times, but you can certainly work on stroke length, distance per stroke, and work on how efficient you can be within training. So when you do come to race, it all falls back into place again.
So let's have another one. So Brendan is asking, do you have a go-to routine before a big race?
Yeah, I did. And it was exactly that, a routine. And it's a routine that I very, very rarely deviated from. And it wasn't a scientific routine at all. It was just something that had worked for me that I stuck to every single time. And looking back now, I would get out of I'd always work back as well. So if I was swimming at 6 o'clock at night, I'd work back. So I knew that certainly for the bigger competitions, you have to be in the core room 15 minutes before. So you literally would write it down and put 6 o'clock, 5:45, get into the core room. So that meant putting my suit on around about probably 20 past 5, and then putting it on for 15 minutes, and then probably having 10 minutes just to myself before going into the core room. So that meant that I had to get out of the warm-up pool around about 5 past 5, get dry, get warm, put some clothes on before putting my suit on. I then knew that I wanted to warm up for roughly about 40-45 minutes. Then you work back. So I want to get in about 4:15. And then, depending on how detailed and what the event was, certainly like in Olympic Games where you have to get onto from the village, you have to get onto the bus to the venue, depending on how long the bus takes, depending on how busy the buses are and the timetables, because obviously they only let so many people on the bus at a time. So then you work it all the way back, and you kind of end up with a start point, and that's what I would do, and then give myself a little bit of leeway for anything that went wrong. But generally,
otherwise you might arrive there and you're like, oh, I've only got this much to, if you don't plan properly.
Yeah. And I always said this, I hate being rushed. I hate feeling like I'm flustered and rushed. And if you turn up on the blocks and you're all agitated, your mind is nowhere near
focus as it could be.
What you're trying to do. You're thinking about, what am I doing? And you see it a lot when certainly a lot of events now, they start calling swimmers out in different lanes and they do things, and lane 4 generally comes out last sometimes for the final. And you see some swimmers are all flustered because other swimmers are ready and you're the last one out. And it's like, well, no, in that instance, take your time. You are allowed as much time as everybody else to put your goggles on, to take your tracksuit off, to do whatever routine you need to do before stepping on the blocks. And a referee should give you that amount of time. So don't rush it, because if you rush it, all you're doing is helping everybody else because you're flustered. But like turn up into a venue, an hour before, and hoping to fit everything in, cram everything in, is not going to work.
So let's have another one. So I'm sorry if I pronounce it wrong. Nathania? Or was it Nathaniel? I'm sorry. What is your favorite stroke, and basically why is it your favorite?
From
the 200,
right? I think I was probably one of the only swimmers, certainly on the British team, that was good at front crawl. I was useless at most. The breaststroke, I was terrible, like really bad, like to the point where we'd do medley in training, and I would do double backstroke because my breaststroke was shocking. I don't understand how you do it. I don't get it. I don't understand why you'd want to swim so slow. That's just me just being against breaststrokers. But I was purely a front crawl swimmer. Yes, I did the 100 from time to time. I did the 400, but mainly with 200 was what I was suited for. So that was my favorite.
So Brennan's asking, speaking of the English Channel, have you ever thought of coming here to swim open water? You should come and visit anyway.
Yeah, I think it's quite similar, isn't it? The English Channel and swimming open water in Malaysia. I think they're quite similar.
I think.
No, I'd love to. I would love to.
Hopefully, you can come swim here too.
Yeah,
that'd be kind of.
Yeah, and one of the good things now is working with Bernice, and get to travel the world and get to still be connected with swimming. So hopefully one day that will be something. And now I took a little bit of a break from swimming and now back into it. So fingers crossed that could come over and have a swim with you guys.
That would be awesome. Maybe you could do the 16 km like I did.
Running.
No, swimming. Round Island.
In a boat.
Swimmers don't run. Swimmers don't run. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Another question. I understand you're superb in freestyle. In the touring events, what Finnish products would you like the most and benefit for middle to long distance swimmer freestyle?
So this isn't necessarily focused on the event, but I've probably got 3 favorite products that Finnish do, and I like a lot. I like all of the products that we do, but the 3 for me that make the most amount of sense are the first one, without doubt, is my favorite product, is the alignment kickboard. The alignment kickboard to me just makes so much sense. Yeah, it's a triangle kickboard with a strap. One hand in, you put one hand on top, so it promotes streamlining, and everybody has a big kickboard, and you sit on it, and you kind of, your shoulders are out of the water, your head's up here, you're putting pressure on your shoulders. If you follow the line of your spine, it's really kind of curved. Your hips are low down, and then your feet are kicking on top of the surface of the water. So really, you're in a weird position to start with. The biggest muscles in your body are your thigh muscles and your hamstring muscles. So you're teaching your body to kick, or your biggest muscles in your body to kick in the wrong position. So it just doesn't make sense. And there's a train of thought where you should be doing around about 15% of your weekly volume of swimming on kick. So 15% of your week, you're kicking, and you're teaching your biggest muscles in your body to kick in the wrong position. And never is your head out the water for such a long time and your shoulders are out. So the alignment kickboard for me makes just perfect sense, because you are promoting streamlining. Your head, the alignment kickboard is here. Your head, your hips, your feet are all in alignment. So you're teaching the biggest muscles in your body to kick in the position that you want to race in. Also, when you're on a kickboard, you slouch, you disengage your core. With the alignment kickboard, you have to hold your body position. So again, it's teaching your core to hold the position that you want to race in. And we all know that if you are sitting on top of the water, or you're lying on top of the water, there's less resistance than if you are dragging yourself through it. So if you can hold that body position, or that better body position on top of the water, you become more efficient, and with the same amount of power, you're going to go quicker. So if that's the number one that if I coach now, all my swimmers would do their kick on alignment kickboard, and you'd see the improvements drastically. You might not be able to kick as fast as you would do on a kickboard, but when you take the kickboard away and you put it into a race situation, your legs are going to be stronger. So in theory, you're going to be kick a lot stronger in that position. The next one is the stability snorkel. For me, a no-brainer. It's by far the best snorkel on the market, bar absolute none. Finnish brought this center snorkel out to market 25 years ago. A lot of other brands copied it, pretty much exactly copied it. It was a company focused 2 or 3 years ago to break the mold, basically, and really reinvent the snorkel. And I think we've done that massively. It doesn't have a head bracket. It's so much more comfortable. It doesn't move when it's on your head. The worst thing about snorkels is when you push off and you get the vibration and you have to move it and you have to set it again before going. There's none of that. You can push off. I've seen people dive with it in and then just dive in and then carry on swimming. It doesn't. People say, well, it hasn't got a purge valve. You don't need a purge valve. What do you need a purge valve for? And it comes in nice colors. It's a lot more hydrodynamic, and it's
much more comfortable than some of the other
situations. So comfortable. It's just, for me, there's nothing like it on the market at the minute. And the last product would be a tempo trainer. If you can understand stroke rate and distance per stroke, the tempo trainer will be your best friend. A lot of coaches don't know how to use them. So my advice to any coaches on here is spend an hour, 2 hours just researching about a tempo trainer and how it can affect the swimmers. And for us, we used to train with a tempo trainer probably 5 or 6 times a week. And it wasn't always about how fast you can spin your arms. Lots of the time it's how slow you can spin your arms or how slow you can rotate your arms. Because the slower you move your arms and you rotate your arms, the more control you have to have as a swimmer. Otherwise, you start to sink in the water. So it's about swimming. A lot of people can swim well fast. The hard thing about swimming is swimming well slow. When you have to really engage everything, you have to work your core, you have to really focus on everything that you are doing. And the tempo trainer, you can play around with different settings, with different speeds, and you can find your sweet spot. Just because my stroke rate was at 44 strokes per minute isn't going to be, for a 200-meter front crawl, isn't going to suit everybody else. And just like that stroke rate for 200 doesn't suit for a 100 or a 400. So it's being quite focused on you as an individual of finding out what it works for you and where you sit, and then you train with it. And also it has a mode where you can just set it on time. So if you want to do, just for easy maths, if you're swimming 25 meters in 25-meter pool and you want to do 4 lengths on a minute and you want it to be even, you set it for 15 seconds, and every 15 seconds it's going to beep at you, and you know whether you're ahead or behind the time that you want to do, and it makes you even. It makes you more consistent in what you're trying to do. They're my three top products.
Let's see. One of the other questions was from Emma. How do you cope with morning sessions? What is the right food to eat before morning swims? I think another person also mentioned about nutrition. Where is it? Nutrition preparation as well.
Yeah. So what would you eat before morning training? I think it comes down to just general nutrition the night before. As long as you have whatever you eat the night before, it's going to be, if you're talking about carbo loading, that's 4 hours before. Anything over that, then it starts to turn, and you won't be using the carbohydrates to burn the energy. So it's not a case of having like a really big pasta meal at 8 o'clock at night if you want to swim at 5 o'clock in the morning, because that was already transferred over to a different energy system. But one thing I would stay away from is really heavy foods. So a really heavy curry the night before, something that you want to wake up, and this, the way you want to wake up, and you want to wake up with enough time to have something to eat, and you want to eat. There was one occasion that I was racing when I was quite young. I had the world's biggest pizza the night before, and I didn't sleep well.
Really heavily on.
Yeah, I didn't sleep well because I was uncomfortable. And I woke up the next day just feeling really lethargic and a bit like I didn't want to eat anything anyway. And it didn't put me in good stead for the rest of the day. So, do you know what? And it's not what you want to hear at all, but lean meat, if you eat meat, vegetables, and a small portion of carbohydrates, and you won't go wrong. And it's, sorry, it's not McDonald's. It's not, anything, any fast food. Just eat well, and your body will react, and you'll be able to get up the next day. Some people eat before they swim. Some people really don't, and they can't deal with it. For me, I had to eat, especially when we were swimming 2.5 hours. I had to get up, so I'd wake up and I'd finish a bowl of cereals an hour before I went swimming, and that always used to work for me. There's some people that just have a banana or some toast. Some people wouldn't eat anything.
So one of the other questions, we have quite a few questions about parents. One of them from Farah is, do you have any advice to parents on how to be awesome swim parents?
Just well, no,
No pressure.
I think from being a parent myself, it's just picking your battles, isn't it? And about trying to be supportive in everything that your child wants to do, and it's about understanding them as an individual as well, and know that not every day is going to be a bed of roses. There's going to be some ups and some downs, and I think as long as you can stay, if you can appreciate the highs but not get too low on the lows, and be quite level-headed throughout, and be a good sounding board for your children, I think that goes a long way. And I think certainly one of my strong characteristics is I see things from both sides. And I read something about during lockdown about how when the teacher 6 months ago or a year ago, the teacher said that your child's a little bit disruptive, and you weren't necessarily agreeing with that teacher, and now you realise that your child is not, a saint. Now you've had 6 months of lockdown. I think it was quite a valid point that we always see our children in the best possible light, and sometimes you've just got to remove yourself and see what is actually going on, to be able to understand where other people see things. So just being supportive, just being level-headed, and being there for the good times and being there for the not so good times. And don't no stress either. No, if they don't win something, as long as it's so. In terms of my children, I'm not bothered if they win or don't win. I'm bothered if they don't put 100% in. That's the bit that's non-negotiable in terms of unless they're ill or injured, you turn up and you give your best. And as long as it's your best and nobody else's best, that's all you can do.
So Finis also mentioned something. Ross and Leah, you're both athletes and parents yourselves. Could you share with us how you communicate successfully to our parents and share the same purpose? Well, my parents right now are like rolling their eyes that I get up at 5 o'clock these days and still do the same things that I used to do, with lesser degree, but still doing that. We'll start with you, Ross. From your perspective.
Yeah, I think it's a hard one, isn't it? How you communicate with your parents, because there's a lot you want to say to your parents that you would never ever say, because you respect them and you love them and you don't want to hurt their feelings. So it's about understanding what messages you want to get across and how you want to get them across, and framing it in a way that is not going to hurt anybody's feelings, and being honest as well. See so many swimmers, as just swimming because that's what I've seen, but I'm sure there's in other sports as well, that the swimmer or the athlete does it because the parents want them to do it, and they don't have the heart to tell them that they don't want to do it anymore. So a lot of it, again, it comes down to being honest, but it's about having that frank conversation of, I don't enjoy this, and I know it's something you want to do, but I don't enjoy this. And trying to get that message across that it's not about them, it's about you as a swimmer or you as an individual, and not trying to live their dreams through the children. I see it now in not necessarily swimming, but certainly parents that they live their dreams through their children. And yeah, the children look like they're having a great time, but I'm sure
somewhere down the line that for me, is whether you're a coach or a parent or parent/coach, having that line of communication with whether it's your own children or the athletes under your wing, having that communication both ways, that the athletes feel also they can talk to you or your children, or depending which way around it is, or along with your parent, that you have that ability, or let's say ability, but the line of, that you can talk to them, good or bad, or sometimes, especially if you're dealing with younger swimmers, I guess, they may not necessarily articulate what they want or how they're feeling as well as perhaps an older swimmer, but being open to listening, I think, would be for some parents as well, the ability to listen and observe, as well as talk to their kids and or swimmers, depending on how you look at it. I think that's important. Communication is a very vital part of whether you're an athlete as well as a coach or parent. That's my perspective, because that's often a struggle, right? For many, they can't, like you were saying, if the child is living the dream of parent, they may not necessarily are able to talk to their parent about it. Are you still with me, Ross?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. For a minute there, you're like frozen. I thought, oh no, we're going to have technical difficulties.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's important if you, as a parent, coming back to how do you become an effective parent, is about having a safe environment for your children to be able to communicate with you and not feel scared or not feel like they're letting anybody down. If you are the swimmer or you are the child, it's about just understanding that, you can't keep worries or concerns bottled up, because then they come out 10 times bigger.
Manifest somewhere else and elsewhere, right? And the worse, as you were saying. One of the other questions is, what was your most memorable swim event? Good, bad, or something funny?
We're trying to mix in all of the probably questions in this one question. And I got reminded of it the other day, actually. But something came up on Facebook about the 4x100 freestyle relay in Beijing, when the US team overtook the French team in the last stroke, and it kept Michael Phelps on to win 8 gold medals at the Beijing Olympics. And I showed my wife the video. I said, "Oh, do you remember this?" She's like, "Yeah, great race." And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Do you know who that swimmer is in lane 8?" She's like, "No, who is it?" I was like, "It was me." And she was like, "Oh, right, okay." She's like, "Was you even in it?" I was like, "Yeah, I was in it." It wasn't in many Olympic finals, but that was one of them. And when that wasn't the story I was going to tell you, but so swam that race, and if you watch it, the world record line is the French and the American swimmers are way ahead, and we're probably a meter behind the world record line at the end. So we're really close to breaking the old world record, and touched the wall. We came 8, but I got out and walking around with the rest of the swimmers, and I said to everybody, I was like, what time did we do? Like, "Oh, I don't know." I was like, "Where did we come?" "Oh, I don't know." I was like, "What do you mean you don't know?" They're like, we were all watching the race, the race that was happening at the front. And I was like, "Why? Like, what happened?" And they're like, "Oh, you should have seen it." I was like, "I can't see it. I was swimming." Like, the whole team was just watching. Certainly wasn't watching me and how we were doing. It was just kind of like a funny moment, and I'm proud to be a part of that race, even though I wasn't affecting anything, because it's probably one of the most watched races ever. Certainly, and I was in the last leg when it was all kicking off, but I didn't have a clue what was going on, and I didn't even know who won, because
you just focused on.
Yeah, it wasn't us, and so none of it made any sense to me until probably 2 or 3 weeks later, when I sat down and watched the race. I was like, oh, now I understand why nobody had a clue how lane 8 did.
It's like
Yeah.
the
So,
fun part was all the front, right? It's like, oh, nearby. Kind of. So let me see. I was going to ask you. Obviously, things have changed from when you first started your own journey. What are some of the changes you've seen for support for young athletes over your career? I mean, and obviously now, I mean, your children or your eldest is now swimming a little. What are the things that you've noticed that have changed from when you were younger or the very beginning of your swimming, and how maybe coaches were
yeah.
approaching things with your
I don't know whether it's because I see it more or am more aware of it. I think people's aspirations have changed. I think people believe a lot more now that they can go on and be successful in swimming. Like I said, when I was growing up, it was just purely a personal thing that I wanted to see how fast I could swim. Never did I think it would ever go anywhere. And that's something that I would look back on if I could change anything, I would have more belief in my ability and what I wanted to do. But I think the aspirations of younger swimmers now are far greater. They're obviously exposed to how people live their life in terms of social media. They understand what's going on a lot more. But I think it becomes a lot more, if we could say professional early on, there's a lot more focus now on land warm-ups, like dry land warm-ups, and cool downs, and nutrition and mental health. There's a lot more, holistically going on than there was then that I was aware of. We didn't really do any land warm-ups, and everything was probably a little bit old school. So yeah, I think things are changing. People are more open to doing things slightly different now, and I think there's a lot more resources out there. Whereas before, and I've never done this, but in the past it was like, well, let's do 10-200s fly, or let's do 2400s, just because that's what I did when I was swimming. Yeah, I think a lot now is focusing on the swimmer, the individual, of how you actually improve them, and you see it in times across the board. Everybody's getting faster. At the top end, they're getting faster, and all the way through. So something's obviously changing, and I think it is the holistic overview of what the swimmer's going through, and the aspiration. But I also do think now people focus more on one sport earlier than they probably did do 15 years ago, 20 years ago, where I think it was a mix of, you did everything, especially certainly in the UK with schools and PE. It was a case of, we'll learn a little about a lot, whereas now you do a little about one thing. Yeah.
So, I mean, thinking about that, what are some of the insights you've learned? I mean, from a personal point of view, also since leaving the sport, and well, you sort of slowly come back to it. I mean, other than working in the industry as such, but what are the insights that you think you've learned, whether it's about yourself or, I mean, you've recently come back to swimming, so what was the different perspectives that you've brought?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this a few times as well. Well, swimming's hard. Swimming's a tough sport. It's one of those sports that, still to this day, I don't really understand how you can swim 60,000 meters a week to go and swim 200 meters a weekend in a race. It doesn't weigh up the amount of effort
that you
have to do to. And I say to get little out of it, and I don't mean that because in my case, going through Olympic Games is no. I'm very proud of that, and I don't want to talk down about the fact that it's a little achievement. But you know, I worked out the last 10 years of being an international swimmer, give or take 1 or 2 lengths, swam around about 1 million lengths to go to the Olympics to swim 4. And that's kind of the commitment that swimmers have to give in. And it doesn't matter what level you get to, you know, it's all the same. You have to put in huge amount of hours to go and swim 4 lengths of the pool. So going through the whole kind of journey, I was one that I wasn't the most talented swimmer, wasn't the most naturally gifted. So I had to work hard at what I got, which is, looking back, is the best way that, you know, I wanted it, because it does really kind of set you up as a, it really does set you up, and it really kind of sets you up for life to actually work hard and to understand that the work ethic is far greater than a talent that doesn't work hard. So I could never rest on my laurels. I could never kind of step out of line, or I didn't think I could ever step out of line, because I knew that somebody else would come along and beat me. So I had a bit of a mentality that, you know, you have to sacrifice so much in swimming, and you have to give up so much, and you can't do so many things. And it was only since I finished swimming and retired from swimming that I realized that I could have done anything I wanted to do, but I chose not to do it, or I chose to do things differently. And, you know, it comes down to the fact that if before training, if there was an apple or a McDonald's, I would have chosen to eat the apple because I thought that was the right thing to do at the time. And I'd walk away thinking, oh, the sacrifices you have to make to be an elite athlete is, I could have had the McDonald's if I wasn't in this, but I've got to have the apple. Well, no, like, nobody held a gun to my head and said, you've got to eat the apple. And it's all about choices. And it's all about making the right choices and understanding that it's not a sacrifice, because you are actively choosing to do what you want, what you think is best. And it was only since I finished swimming that I realized that, you know, going to 3 Olympic Games, Commonwealth Games, Europeans, whatever, traveling the world, there's no sacrifices. It was all life experiences. It was setting me up into good stead to have another career afterwards. And all those choices I made along the way were my own choices. And I think it happens a lot in life that you feel like you're missing out, and you feel like you want to do more, you want to do this, that, and the other. But you choose, for whatever reason, not to do it. And instead of having that chip on your shoulder that you've missed out, you should feel a lot more, well, it's my choice. You know, I chose to do that. So don't begrudge the choice that you make, because you're doing it for the best possible reasons. And that's something I reckon, if I could go back again, belief and understanding that you make the choices that you think are best at the time, and don't begrudge anything, would be the 2 bits of advice.
Oh, it's about the you were talking about taking ownership of your journey as an athlete. I suppose that plays into that, right? There will be things that you may not be able to be a part of for whatever reason. Either you're away for a race weekend, or for whatever reason. And, you know, I think that you're saying dealing with what could be a chip on your shoulder eventually, especially as you get older throughout the time frame, that you know, your friends are going out to cinemas, or they're going out here, and you're doing this, and you've got to be up at, you know, 5 a.m. or 4:30, depending on your training schedule, right? And, you know, having that, well, they get to do that, and I don't get to, you know. So I think it's part, like, as you said, of taking ownership of, this is the journey you're working on for yourself, for whatever reason. So
yes. It is. I think, again, taking ownership is massive. because as I said earlier, swimming is an individual individual sport. I know it is also a team effort. But if you don't take ownership of what you're doing, and this is again in everything in life, if you don't take ownership, then you'll always blame people that people didn't do things that they should have done, and didn't. And I've seen it so many times throughout my swimming career that the coach didn't do this, or such and such didn't do this. Well, do it yourself. Do it yourself. It's not other people's job. Or again, coming back to when you're a fourth, it's my mum's fault. She didn't pack my swimming goggles. Take ownership. Put them in yourself. Like, take that away. Yeah, mistakes will happen. But don't blame people, and take ownership that my mum didn't put my goggles in. But good job, I put my spares in.
So they learn to, like you say, it's life skills, right? It's being able, because as in working life, something's going to go wrong somewhere, or this and that. So you learn to, I don't know if process is the right word in that instance, but right? Well, okay, I have this. I'm going to learn to be more resourceful. I know how I'm going to manage the situation, right? Like you said, take ownership of your actions or the way forward, or how you approach things.
Yeah.
So, do we have any more? I think we will close up as usual. We always try to end this way. And what advice would you give to young athletes today as they begin their journey?
Yeah, I think I've obviously answered this a couple of times, but have belief. Again, looking at what I came from, or where I came from, to where I got to. Okay, I never actually. Once I qualified for the Olympic Games, then I changed my goals, and I wanted to win a medal. I never quite got there, and which, yeah, okay, it hurts sometimes, but ultimately, it's okay to have goals that you don't reach, as long as you striving for them every single day. But having that belief, I don't know where Michael Phelps comes from, but he doesn't come from New York or LA or a massive city or London where you think people come from. You look around, and you look at when you watch the Olympics, and you look at the medal table, and there are medals going to pretty much every corner of the earth. You don't have to be born in America or China to be successful. So believe in yourself, believe in what you're doing, have faith in the people around you, and really kind of, again, take ownership. It's your journey, whether it's in swimming, sports, work, school. It's your journey. The results are yours. So take that 100% ownership that what you get at the end of the day that is by your name is the best that you can do every single day. So there'll be my top tips. And sometimes I do wish I could go back.
Give yourself advice at that age.
But hindsight, you would do so many things different with hindsight. Every single day you'd make different decisions. So it's about doing what you can when you can to the best of your ability, and knowing that it's 100% you.
Well, thank you for that, Ross. That was an excellent, very educational, I think, for a lot of parents as well. Knowing the different journeys that people have been on, and especially parental support and the coaches and the, like you were saying, the older swimmers mentorship as well, which definitely, I think, helped quite a lot. I want to thank our sponsors, Finis, of course, woohoo, and Finis Malaysia and Swim Shop to You and Real Out Play for their support, as always. I would like to quickly mention that you can get 10% off items in Swim Shop to you if you use the code Dugongs, which is my spirit animal. So we can use that. And also, Ross will choose his favorite questions a little later. We'll make the announcement of who would be his favorite question of the day, and they would win a Finnish stability snorkel, which is pretty awesome, I reckon. And thank you again, everyone, Ross, for tuning in and having a chat with us, and to everyone and everyone's questions. And that's all, folks. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
See you guys next week. Bye.